the streets with us and in our homes and everything. So this case is super important with Amanda. We're here with Amanda Jocelyn today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Can you speak a little into that? A little louder.
Can you
hear her? Little voice.
We can hear you.
Should I project? My kids would tell me, Mom, you're being too loud. So
there you go.
Okay, I'll project.
Pretend you're talking to your kids. How about that?
There you go.
That works. That works.
Okay.
Have you ever been on radio before? Have you ever done
have
radio?
not.
Okay,
This is
welcome
my
to
first.
Planet Green Trees. Yeah, welcome to
Welcome.
Planet. This is
Thank you guys
episode
for having me.
372.
It's been good so far. Lots of good information.
Well, your little voice is kind of funny coming out of your body because what I've seen you do is very typical of my moms and Michael's moms, which is oftentimes they're the ones that get up off the floor during the raid and say, hey, get off the back of his neck to the cop, right? And they're the ones that'll open a business and serve patients in good faith that the state will protect them for not having any criminal intent. So I think you're a badass. I actually
thank
do.
you.
So you were, let's get what we're going to do. I want folks to see what this looks like to execute a warrant in Michigan. When you read about it in the paper, they executed a warrant. What that actually looks like. And all the things that Michael talks about every week and blogs about at Comorn Law as regularly as he can about what's going on in the courtroom that everybody really needs to know about. We're going to walk through it from step one, day you got raided, to just last week when Michael went into the courtroom in Wayne County and you received your sentencing. Okay? Ready?
We're ready.
Okay.
So what day did you get raided? And where? It was March?
It was March
19th. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
2015.
2015.
15, right?
Yeah.
There was you want me to tell? I'll tell the story. Just to break the facts down. It was at two locations. There was a place in Plymouth, Canton,
Had Canton.
in a shopping mall. So amongst a deli and a tanning salon and other types
Chinese
of Chinese
a
food,
dry cleaner.
there was
We like Chinese food.
There was a continuing criminal enterprise that was taking place. I just want you to know,
Okay, continuing criminal enterprise taking place.
as they alleged in
Yes.
the city of Plymouth. And I say that because
next to a tanning salon.
this
and
is
a
my
Chinese-
point. This is my
okay.
point. There's this side joke, which is like, okay, it wasn't like she wasn't as transparent as you could be. Like there wasn't the big internationally renowned green crosses on the front and the people coming in and out with, prescription bags as they do at dispensaries. To say that wasn't done and they didn't know about it would mean one of two things: either they are the worst police force that's ever existed, or they really knew. It's one or the other. You know what I mean? Like it's not like they just all of a sudden they decided. But and they of course throughout this investigation there was several where they showed up and used her videotape, asked to use her videotape so they could investigate an incident in the parking lot, a hit and run, and also someone who had left the child in the car. Don't ask. There was a point in time where the facility was broken into, and they called her and suggested that she move the cannabis for the patients to a different area and lock it up. And one time she went in and complained about some embezzlement that had taken place, which seems to be the pitfall. It was that which I think was the... And likewise, as we had discussed earlier, the case in Grand Rapids had the same implications when reaching out to try to stop thieves. Anyways, so that was what was taking place, and the raid took place in Plymouth. And I can give you the reasons alleged in the affidavit, which involved a confidential informant who, at the time, it was represented to us that had no. At the preliminary exam, the confidential informant had no agreement, no pending cases, and to testify in this case, which makes no sense because usually
Goodness of her heart.
they are working off a
citizen.
case or something. They got a reason and motivation to testify. Because, how does one get to the point where that may become a thing in their life? It's not like you're driving to work one day and say, you know what? I'm going to drive over to the police department and become a CI. Rarely does it happen. I mean, there are people like that. The type of people that are going to be CIs are people that are kind of want to be police officer people usually, or people that are some doo-doo and they got to work off a case. So I say that because this particular person that testified in important facts come out later on, and I want you to ask questions to Amanda, but let me just finish the... So she was utilized as a patient to go in and buy marijuana, represented herself as a patient to purchase, which she was, and did so in...
She even sold me vaporizer pens.
She even sold vaporizer pens because she would go to the facility and was a distributor of those kind of devices that were used and represented herself as such. But beyond that, this is what was very unique about the case, because as it goes, we had to defend these deliveries, right? The allegations are that CI went in, purchased marijuana from the facility. They're attaching Amanda to the sale by way of the aiding and abetting theory or conspiracy, or in this case, continuing criminal enterprise. And the courts rule sometimes that despite whatever takes place beforehand, you can't defend this under Section 8. Let me say that again. Because of the fact that the CI patient was not connected to the seller, that for some reason precludes the bringing of a Section 8 defense. And this is like a nightmare. It's really terrible misinterpretation of the law. I know, Sharma, I'm sorry. But anyways,
it's okay.
Because this is what the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act was intended for, and only by some misinterpretation of the Supreme Court in a case from 2012 overhauled would something like this be able to go on. And that's what happened in this particular case. But if there was ever a case that would make a Section 8, it was this one, because this particular CI testified that she had gone in there to buy marijuana for herself, became a member, bought marijuana, and then it had been in there and been a member, bought marijuana for herself, and then became a CI and purchased marijuana in September. She testified, and then in March, immediately before the raids took place, she also went in and did a controlled buy on 3 occasions. That means she goes in, wearing a wire or video, purchases marijuana, and walks out and gives it to the CI and talks about it. Okay, so what she didn't testify and what she didn't tell anybody was that between the September 1 buy and the 3 buys in March, immediately before the raids, she'd bought marijuana for herself and for her own use 26 times, 26, 24, doesn't matter. Meaning she really needed medical marijuana. In fact, this woman was trying to be mean and angry in her testimony and tried to suggest that she was getting shorted or whatnot, but didn't realize that when she shorted meant she used it all. And she needed to go back and get more because she's got a medical condition. And the marijuana that she was purchasing wasn't for somebody else. It was for her to treat her medical conditions. See what I'm saying? Like, it was the perfect, and she went on to explain, and it was, and she even acknowledged that the caregivers that were interacting with her would ask her questions, that the selection of the cannabis was based upon the condition, and that several questions were asked to ascertain, what the issues were with her health at that particular time and try to find the right strain. So, like, everything came out of her mouth, despite her adversary position, to make out a Section 8 defense. Which is
on the stand.
On the stand.
So,
26. Think about this. What if you had a CI that was going into a heroin den and buying heroin on 4 occasions, as described, and when they weren't working for the police, they were going in and buying heroin and using it for themselves? Never would that be allowed. This is called the mismanagement of CI 101 in the Department of Justice or even the state police guidelines to how to handle a CI. But that's just the beginning, because some events took place at the exam that we can come back to for question 3. But they executed a search warrant at the location and at her house. Okay? She was not at her house at the time. She just pulled out and drove away with her son in the car.
So
right.
Let me just stop you just for a moment.
Yes.
Hold that thought. So right now we're going to backtrack all the way back to the day of the raids in this case. And before we start that, can you talk to me about what a confidential informant actually is? I'm glad Jeff Frazier, international civil rights attorney, Jeff Frazier's in the courtroom today. Your Honor.
Speak to Judge Sharmy. Be polite. Right?
No, I'm glad you're here because my guess is that you're going to have some historical reference for confidential informants when they began to, or that when they began to become really popular in the courtroom, in the drug war. I know when you tried the cases in Texas, in Tully and stuff, that they were probably at that time used, and that was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
because I don't think people understand what a confidential informant is. The stuff that Michael's saying right now is just insane to me. That's madness, all of it. That somebody can come in and lie.
We don't know about the lie yet. We didn't talk about that. But yes.
Everything he's saying is madness.
They can lie to you. They can sit and smoke pot with you and then arrest you for it.
And do heroin with you?
We haven't even gotten to the lying part yet.
Yeah, the police are allowed to lie. That's a show we in a blog that we are owed to.
The drug war was designed for a confidential informant system to thrive. I mean, you couldn't have invented a better thing because it's the history is old. In Texas, in some of these cases where we were busting these task forces, they had confidential informants that literally had a gun to their head. I mean, they took a gun and said, we're going to lose you out in the East Texas swamp, or you're going to go and you're going to testify against these people. So they were coerced.
Oh, my God.
God to hear but you can be coerced also by being threatened with a 50-year felony, spending the rest of your life in jail, so people flip. So they work deals, and they're allowed to break the law, to take you down and lie about it. Yeah.
And the prosecutors are willing bullies in that game. Absolutely no doubt about it. And in this case, really engineered it, but we haven't gotten.
Well, it's an interesting dynamic, and one could say that in the war on drug, if there's one area that you can say, I mean, that we know that we all believe the war on drug is a failure. There's no winning, but the war has been lost. The after effects have not proven anything other than it's not producing what it was intended, and the program is a failure. But what I think a victory was substantially, I can say this objectively, is that the loyalty of the law enforcement community versus the citizens on these issues, the fact that citizens become CIs and police officers don't. The loyalty within the law enforcement community is so strong, and it's only with that kind of strength and family embracing could a citizen be drawn, because it's like an unbreakable wall against this tiny little citizen that can be dragged and pulled into, and that's what you're up against. And I'm not making excuses for it, but it is a good argument can be made. It's horrible, but the police don't rat on each other. Even when it's wrong. And I mean,
that's brilliant. That's a brilliant observation. I never thought about it in those terms.
But what are you going to do? See, the thing is, and what I'm saying, the victory is this: that because they don't rat on each other, I mean, even though I see it all the time, and it may be
it's militant.
It's militant, but I'm saying their veracity of their statements in court are given a pass time and time again. In all the cases of search warrants are won on the police officer's testimony of what they smelled or said they saw.
And they lie all the time.
Well, okay, but they're given a pass, and that's what I'm saying. In the war on drugs, they've gotten this, beyond reproach, testified, unimpeachable.
Yes, again and again.
Right, and even if you do catch them in it, it's there's exceptions for. It's not their fault. It's the magistrate's fault. Good faith, inevitable discovery. All these exceptions to what would be deemed. And if it is their own fault and it does get dismissed, they don't go on a list. There's no list of bad search warrants. They go out that afternoon after they get a case dismissed and get an affidavit signed and pull the same stuff. In that case, the lawyer doesn't raise it or pick up on it.
So that's horrific to me, and especially considering I've been in the courtroom with you a few times. Maybe 30 or 40 times total, 50. And you always catch a testifying drug task force member in lies. And nothing ever freaking happens in all of those. I just want people to understand the scope of the corruption here.
The judges
every
have a really
time.
low bar.
We're not exaggerating. Which is why it's important, I think, for us to start taking your reporter right into those trial cases that you're trying.
Well, and this is not uncommon.